Some weapons detonate in the hands of the person who built them. I did not know that yet on a Sunday evening in April, sitting at my mother-in-law's dining room table in Naperville, Illinois, watching her slide a white envelope across the tablecloth toward my husband with the careful precision of a woman who has been waiting a very long time to do exactly this. Her name is Margaret Best. She is 64 years old. She has a colonial house on Whispering Oaks Drive in Naperville's west side, with cream walls, brass fixtures, and the specific quality of order that belongs to a woman who has decided the appearance of control is the same thing as having it. She arranges flowers on Sundays. She irons her tablecloths. She serves pot roast at dinner, because pot roast is what you serve when you want a room to feel like family while you're in the process of destroying one. My name is Helen Best. I am 38 years old. I grew up in Wheaton, about 10 miles east of Naperville, in a house that was warm and loud and imperfect in all the ways that houses with real families in them tend to be. I married David Best in June of 2019 in a ceremony at the Morton Arboretum that my mother still has framed on her living room wall. David is 39. He is a structural engineer with a firm on Deal Road. He is the kind of man who fixes things that are broken without being asked and then never mentions that he fixed them. Our daughter Lily was born in March of 2022. She is 3 years old. She has David's dark eyes and my tendency to narrate everything she is doing out loud, which David says is the most Helen thing imaginable, and which I consider a gift. Margaret has never fully agreed that Lily looks like David. I noticed this early. The way her eyes moved over Lily at family gatherings, that brief inventory she ran, the slight pause before she said something complimentary about the baby that always felt like a compliment that had been edited from something else. I filed it. I did not examine it too closely, because examining things too closely in the early years of a marriage to a man whose mother has opinions is a way of making yourself miserable before anything has actually happened. Then things actually happened. The first thing that happened was a comment Margaret made at Lily's second birthday party in March of 2024. We were in the backyard of our house in Lisle, the town just east of Naperville, where David and I bought a 3-bedroom split level in 2021, and Lily was eating cake with the focused intensity of a 2-year-old who has recently discovered that cake is one of the great facts of existence. Margaret crouched down beside her, looked at her face, then looked up at me and said, "She doesn't really look like either side, does she?" It was not a question. I said, "She looks like herself. She's 2. Margaret smiled. Of course. She stood up and went back to the food table. David had not heard it. I did not repeat it to him that evening because I had learned in 5 years of marriage that repeating Margaret's comments to David required a specific kind of energy. The energy of a woman who is prepared to defend both the accuracy of her recollection and the reasonableness of her interpretation simultaneously, while her husband loves both of them and does not want to be in the middle. I wrote it down when I got home. Date, time, exact wording. My attorney, a woman named Carol, who had handled our closing documents in 2021, and whom I had called in early 2024 after Margaret made a veiled comment about what happens to children when marriages don't work out, had advised me to document incidents, not because anything was imminent, because documentation is the difference between a story and a record. I kept the record in a green binder in the bottom drawer of my desk, in the home office. I did not know yet how much it would matter, or how little it would ultimately need to be used. The second thing that happened was a text message from Margaret to David in January of 2025, which David showed me because he tells me things and because he was confused by it and wanted my read. The text read, "I've been thinking about Lily, and I want to talk to you about something. Not on the phone. In person." David texted back, "Is everything okay? Margaret, it will be. I just want to make sure you have all the information you need." David came to the kitchen where I was making dinner and showed me his phone, with the expression he uses when something is bothering him, and he has not yet found the right language for it. "What do you think she means?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "I think I know," I thought. "I think she is building towards something." David called her that evening. She told him it could wait. They scheduled Sunday dinner for 2 weeks out. February 2nd. I went to the home office. I opened the green binder. I added an entry. "Welcome back to Sweet Family Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, The people in these accounts had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. February 2nd was a Sunday. We drove to Naperville with Lily in her car seat, eating crackers and telling us at length about a dream she'd had involving a purple dog and a slide. David drove. I watched Naperville go by outside the window. The wide streets, the neat subdivisions, the particular quality of a suburb that has decided prosperity as its primary identity. Whispering Oaks Drive, the colonial house, cream walls. Margaret opened the door before we knocked, which she always does because she monitors the driveway from the front window, and has done so for as long as David can remember. "There she is," Margaret said, looking at Lily with the specific warmth she reserved for Lily in public. Genuine in its way, but curated. An emotion that had been reviewed before deployment. Lily held up a cracker. "For you," Lily said. Margaret took the cracker with the grace of someone accepting a state gift. "Thank you, sweetheart." We went inside. The pot roast was in the oven. The table was set for 3. David's brother Ryan was traveling, his wife Sandra away with her own family. Just us. Just Margaret, and David, and me, and Lily in the portable high chair we brought. I helped with the salad. David opened wine. Margaret moved around the kitchen with the efficiency of someone running an operation she had prepared for extensively. The envelope was on the kitchen counter the whole time. I noticed it when I was reaching for the salad bowl. Standard white envelope, sealed, no label on the front. Margaret's hand moved over at once while she was talking about something else, a small, unconscious gesture of ownership. I filed that too. We ate dinner. We talked about Lily's preschool, which she had started in January at a place on Maple Street in Lisle that she loved with the wholehearted devotion of a 3-year-old who has discovered that other children exist, and that this is wonderful. We talked about David's current project. We talked about a trip Margaret was considering to see her sister in Phoenix. Normal conversation, the kind that exists on the surface of something else. Lily fell asleep in the high chair at 7:15, which she does when she has eaten enough and the adults have been talking too long. David moved her to the travel cot in the spare room. He came back to the table. Margaret got up. She picked up the envelope from the counter. She sat back down. She slid it across the tablecloth toward David. "I think you need to see this," she said. She was smiling. "I want to tell you what that smile looked like, because it matters." It was not a cruel smile. It was not the smile of a villain in a story who knows they have won. It was something more complicated, and in some ways more revealing. The smile of a woman who believes she is performing an act of love, who has convinced herself that what she is about to do is for her son's benefit, who has built a story in which she is the person who saw the truth when no one else would, and who had the courage to bring it forward. The story she had built was wrong, but she did not know that yet. David looked at the envelope, then at his mother. "What is this?" "Open it," Margaret said. He picked it up, looked at me. I held his gaze and kept my expression level because I had been preparing for this moment since January, not with a plan, but with composure. Whatever was in that envelope, I had not been unfaithful to my husband. I knew what a DNA test would find. I had no fear of the result. What I did not know was what else it would find. David opened the envelope. Inside was a folded document. 3 pages, the professional formatting of a private laboratory. He unfolded it. Read the first page. His face did not change immediately. He turned to the second page. Read it. Turned to the third. He set the document down. He looked at his mother. Then he looked at me. And then he said the words that made Margaret's smile disappear so completely, it was as if it had never been there. "Mom," he said, very quietly, "did you know the whole time, or did you just find out tonight too?" Margaret's face went through 3 expressions in under 2 seconds. Confusion first, genuine, unperformed. She had been expecting a different scene. She had scripted this moment as a revelation about me, and David's first words had not followed the script at all. Then something else moved across her face, a flash of something that was not confusion, that arrived and departed so quickly, I would not have caught it if I had not been watching carefully. Recognition. The flash of a person who has just understood that the ground has shifted. Then, fear. She reached for the document. David put his hand flat on it. "Don't," he said. He was still very quiet. That is the thing about David that Margaret had always underestimated. She mistook his evenness for passivity. She had spent 39 years reading his calmness as absence of conviction. She was reading it wrong. His calmness is not absence, it is depth. The quieter David gets, the more completely he has understood a situation. He had understood this one. "David," Margaret started. "The test confirms Lily is my daughter," he said. He looked at me. 100%, the markers are exact. "I know," I told him. He picked up the document, read from the third page. It also ran a broader panel. Standard for this type of test when multiple family members submit samples. He looked at his mother. "You submitted your own sample. For comparison." Margaret said nothing. "You and I share 0 biological markers," David said. 0. The lab flagged it automatically. He set the document down. The note on page 3 says, and I'm reading this directly, "We recommend the client consult with a genetic counselor regarding the unexpected finding of non-paternity or non-maternity in the family comparison panel." The dining room was completely silent. Outside, a car went by on Whispering Oaks Drive. The oven ticked as it cooled. "Non-maternity," David said. "That's the word they used." Margaret's hand was on the tablecloth. Her fingers had gone white at the knuckles. "How long have you known?" David asked. She did not answer. "Mom." Not angry. Something more devastating than anger. A question asked by a man who has just discovered that his entire understanding of his own history requires revision, and who needs one true thing to hold on to. "How long?" "David, how long have you known I was adopted?" The word landed in the room and stayed there. Margaret closed her eyes. She had known since 2019. That is what she told us. Eventually, after 20 minutes of conversation that moved through her initial deflections and into something honest, the specific honesty of a person who has been carrying a secret so long that when it finally comes out, there is relief mixed in with the devastation. David's father, Robert, had told her everything in the spring of 2019, 6 months before he died of a cardiac event in October of that year. He had made her promise not to tell David. He had written a letter to be held by their family attorney, a man named Paul on Chicago Avenue in Naperville, to be released only if David ever asked directly about his biological origins, or if a situation arose that made disclosure unavoidable. The letter was still with Paul. It had been there for 6 years. Margaret had honored Robert's wishes. And then, in her conviction that I had betrayed her son, she had run a DNA test that she believed would expose me, never considering that the broader family panel she included herself in would expose the secret she had been keeping for 6 years. Instead, "I was trying to protect him," she said. David looked at her for a long time. "From what?" he asked. She didn't have a good answer, and I think in that moment, watching her search for one and come up empty, she understood for the first time what she had actually been protecting. Not David, the version of the family she had built in her own mind. The story in which she was the mother, unconditionally, without asterisks. A story she had tried to defend by attacking mine. "You ran a DNA test on my daughter," David said, "on a 3-year-old. Without asking me, without asking Helen. Because you decided, on your own, with no evidence, that Helen had been unfaithful." Margaret looked at the tablecloth. "And the test you ran to prove that," David said, "proved the opposite. And it proved something else." He paused. "I need to call Paul. David, please. I need to call Paul," he said again. "Tonight." He stood up. He walked to the living room. I heard him on the phone. I sat at the table with Margaret. She looked at me. The first time all evening she had looked at me without the architecture of her plan holding her expression in place. Without the smile. Without the certainty. "I was wrong about you," she said. "Yes," I told her. "I should have." "Yes," I said again. "Not cruelly. Simply." She nodded. She looked at her hands. From the spare room, I heard Lily make the small sound she makes when she is cycling through a sleep transition. A brief murmur, then quiet again, completely unaware of what the adults in the next room had just done to each other and to themselves. Paul answered on the second ring. He had been Robert's attorney for 22 years, and he had held that letter for 6 of them. When David told him what had happened, the DNA test, the results, the conversation, Paul was quiet for a moment. "I've been expecting this call," he said. "Not like this, but I've been expecting it. Can I come tonight?" David asked. "Come tomorrow morning," Paul said. 9 o'clock. Bring Helen if you want to." David came back to the dining room. He looked at his mother. "I'm going to Paul's office tomorrow. You should know that." Margaret nodded. She looked small in a way I had never seen her look before, not diminished, but reduced to something true. The performance of control had dropped away, and what was left was a 64-year-old woman sitting at her own dining room table, surrounded by the consequences of a decision she had made, in the certainty that she was protecting something, and which had instead dismantled the thing she was trying to protect. We took Lily home. The drive back to Lyle was quiet, not the hostile quiet of a crisis, the working quiet of two people who have absorbed something large and are processing it in parallel. Lily slept in her car seat. The streetlights on Route 53 moved past the windows in their regular intervals. "Are you okay?" I asked. "No," David said. "Not yet." He drove for a moment. "Are you?" "I'm angry," I told him. "Not at you." "I know." He reached over and took my hand without looking away from the road. "I'm sorry she did that to you. To Lily. She did it to herself," I said. He squeezed my hand. "Yeah." Paul's office on Chicago Avenue in Naperville had the settled quality of a practice that had been in the same building for a long time and had no intention of going anywhere. Paul himself was 67, with the measured ease of an attorney who had spent 4 decades delivering complicated information and had learned that the delivery mattered as much as the content. He poured coffee. He placed the letter on the desk between us. It was a standard white envelope, sealed, Robert's handwriting on the front. "For David, when the time comes." David picked it up, held it for a moment. "Do you want to read it here?" Paul asked. "Yes," David said. He opened it. I watched his face while he read. He read it the way he reads everything that matters, completely, without rushing, going back twice to sections that required it. The letter was 4 pages. It took him 11 minutes. When he finished, he folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. "They found me through a Catholic adoption agency," he said. "St. Vincent's, Chicago, 1986. He looked at Paul. "My biological mother was 19. She named me Thomas before she surrendered me." "Yes," Paul said. "Robert knew her name." David looked at the envelope. "He said he wanted to tell me. He said he tried 3 times and couldn't find the right moment." A pause, and then there wasn't a right moment left. The office was quiet. "He said he was proud of me," David said. His voice had the quality of someone reporting a fact they are still deciding what to do with. "He said being my father was the best thing he ever did. I believed it before I read it, and I believe it now." He stood up, shook Paul's hand. We walked out into a Tuesday morning in April, Naperville going about its business on Chicago Avenue, oblivious to the fact that my husband had just read the most important letter of his life and was standing on the sidewalk deciding who he was now. He stood there for a moment. Then he said, "Breakfast?" I looked at him. "I need pancakes," he said, "and I need to sit somewhere that isn't that office and eat something normal while I figure out what I'm feeling." "Yes," I said. "Absolutely yes." We went to a diner on Washington Street. We ordered pancakes and coffee and eggs and ate all of it. David talked about his father, about the specific memories that were surfacing now with new context. A comment Robert had made once about how family was a choice more than a circumstance. A moment when David was 16 and had asked Robert if he looked like him, and Robert had said, "You look like the best of all of us," and changed the subject. Small moments that had seemed unremarkable and now carried the weight of everything unsaid. He wasn't lying, David said. He was protecting something. Just badly. People do that, I said. Margaret was doing the same thing, he said. Badly. He poured more coffee. I'm not ready to let her off the hook for the DNA test. That was a violation. Of you. Of Lily. Of our family. He looked at the cup. But I also understand now why she was afraid. She was afraid of losing me. She's been afraid of losing me for 39 years because somewhere in her she always knew the thing that made her afraid was real. The fear doesn't justify what she did, I said. No, he agreed. It explains it. Those aren't the same thing. He was right. They are not the same thing. And the distinction matters because one of them opens a door and the other closes it. I want to tell you about the conversation I had with Margaret 3 weeks later, because it is the part of this story that I think about most. She called me on a Thursday morning in late April. Not David. Me. That was the first thing I noticed. She had always routed communication through David, the way people route difficult things through intermediaries when they are not ready to be direct. She called me directly. Helen, she said, I'd like to come and see Lily, if that's something you'd consider. I thought about it. Yes, I said. Saturday morning. Our house. She came at 10. She brought flowers, which I put in a vase, and a picture book for Lily about a girl who goes on an adventure in the woods, which Lily immediately claimed as her most important possession. They sat on the living room floor and read it twice. I watched from the kitchen doorway. Margaret looked smaller in my house than she did in her own, in the way that people look smaller when they are in a space where they do not have home court certainty. But there was something else too, something that had not been there before. She was just looking at Lily, not running an inventory, not comparing features, not searching for something that would confirm or deny a story she had already written. Just looking at her granddaughter the way a grandmother looks at a child she loves and is grateful to be near. She's wonderful, Margaret said, when Lily had moved on to arranging cushions into what she described as a house for bears. She is, I said. Margaret looked at me. I know that what I did was wrong, not just because of how it turned out, because of what it was. A pause. I treated you as a suspect, in your own marriage, in your own family, and I was wrong. You were, I said. I want to do better, she said. I don't know if that means anything to you right now. It means something, I said. It doesn't erase anything, but it means something. Lily brought her a cushion. For your house, Lily said, with great seriousness. Margaret took the cushion. Thank you. This is exactly what my house needed. Lily went back to construction. Satisfied, I made coffee. We sat in my kitchen and talked for an hour. Not about the DNA test, not about David's adoption, not about the green binder in my desk drawer which I had not opened in 3 weeks and did not intend to open unless I needed to. We talked about Lily, about David's project at work, about the picture book Margaret had brought, which turned out to have been David's favorite at age 4, which she had kept in a box for 35 years. I want him to have it back, she said. I brought it for Lily, but I want him to know I kept it. Tell him that, she said. She looked at her coffee cup. I will, I said. If you've made it this far, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people listen without ever doing it. It costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you, genuinely. Now, the last thing I want to say. Here's what I keep coming back to. Margaret ran a DNA test on my 3-year-old daughter because she had decided I was guilty of something, and she wanted the evidence to confirm it. She was not interested in the truth. She was interested in the version of the truth she had already written and needed proved. This is one of the most common and most destructive patterns in human relationships. The decision made first, the evidence gathered second, the conclusion written before the investigation begins. It looks like due diligence. It feels like courage. It is neither. It is confirmation bias in action, and it is how people destroy relationships they claim to be protecting. Margaret was not wrong to love her son. She was not wrong to want to protect him. Where she went catastrophically wrong was in deciding she already knew the threat and proceeding accordingly. Without evidence, without conversation, without the basic respect of treating the person she suspected as someone who deserved the assumption of innocence. The weapon she built to destroy me was a DNA test. The DNA test confirmed I was telling the truth. And then it told her something she had been keeping at arm's length for 6 years. The truth about her own family, the secret her husband had trusted her with, and which had been slowly reshaping her fear into something that needed an outlet. She found the outlet in me. The thing she was trying to hide from David. The adoption, the secret, the 39 years of a story she had told herself about who she was. came apart because she could not resist trying to unmake me. The lesson I want you to take from this is not that Margaret got what she deserved. That framing is too simple for what actually happened, and it shortchanges the complexity of real human behavior. The lesson is this: the evidence you gather against someone else is also evidence about you. The questions you ask, the tests you run, the investigations you conduct, all of it reveals your suspicions, your fears, your blind spots, and the lengths you are willing to go to in order to protect a story you have decided is true. Margaret's DNA test told me she had been afraid for years. It told David something about his own history he had a right to know. It told a laboratory that ran a broader panel than Margaret intended that the family picture she was defending did not match the biological record. She brought one envelope to that table. It contained several truths she had not planned to share. David has been in contact with the adoption registry. He is moving slowly and carefully, which is consistent with who he is. He has not made decisions about whether or how to pursue his biological family, because those decisions are significant and he is a man who takes significant decisions seriously. He has kept the letter Robert wrote. He has read it several times. He told me once, on a Sunday morning in May, with Lily eating cereal across the table and the spring light coming through the kitchen window, that the line he thinks about most is the last one. Being your father was the best decision I ever made. That wasn't really a decision at all. He said, I think he means it wasn't really a choice once they saw me, that it was just obvious. Yes, I said. That's what he means. He looked at Lily. I understand that completely, he said. Lily looked up from her cereal. Daddy, she said, with the absolute authority of a 3-year-old who has assessed the situation and found it satisfactory. You have cereal on your face. He did. We both laughed. The green binder is still in the bottom drawer of my desk. I have not needed to open it, I hope I never do. But I keep it anyway. Because documentation is the difference between a story and a record. And because the people who told me I was wrong about Margaret, there were not many of them, but there were some, should know that I had 31 entries, all labeled, all dated, all filed. I did not need a single one of them. The test she ran said everything that needed to be said. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more family-centered accounts like this.